The Las Vegas Raiders are heading into one of their most revealing games of the season, a high-stakes showdown with the Los Angeles Chargers. But this time, the spotlight is brighter than ever, because the Raiders are stepping onto the field without their high-priced offensive coordinator for the first time. The man they once believed would lead a top-tier offense is gone, and now all eyes turn to veteran coach Greg Olsen, who takes over the play-calling duties. Olsen's experience is real. He's been around the league, he's called plays, and yes, his style leans conservative. That alone guarantees one thing: the Raiders' offense is about to look different. And whether fans love the Raiders, doubt the Raiders, or want to see them crash this season, these next few games matter more than people realize, because they're going to reveal something the entire fanbase has been wondering. Is Pete Carroll really the right man to lead this team into the future? There have already been moments this season where Carroll's decisions raised eyebrows. Concerns around the offensive line, questions about his staff, and confusion about who is really responsible for the offensive struggles have followed the team all year. Reports surfaced that Chip Kelly wasn't executing the offense correctly, wrong motion packages, missed timing, and play designs that didn't match what the Raiders practiced. Even players allegedly backed those issues privately. If those reports are true, the offense we saw earlier wasn't even functioning the way it was drawn up. And now, with new leadership calling the shots, we're finally going to see if the problem was the system, or the people running it. Before we dive deeper into the latest Raiders updates, do one quick thing. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the biggest Raiders stories. Alright, let's move on to the new news. With Olsen now steering the offense, this matchup becomes more than just Raiders versus Chargers. It becomes a test, a measurement of where this team truly stands, especially against a Chargers squad dealing with injuries and inconsistency. If the Raiders suddenly look smoother, cleaner, and more aggressive on offense, then we'll know exactly what, or who, was holding this offense back before. The Chargers are limping into this matchup, especially on the edges. Their starting tackles are out, and they've been forced to rely on Trevor Penning, a player many around the league believe hasn't lived up to expectations at tackle. That immediately opens a door for the Raiders' pass rush. If there was ever a game for Vegas to control the line of scrimmage, it's this one. Now, yes, some fans think losing out could help with draft position. But imagine the opposite. What if the Raiders get hot? What if they close the year by stacking wins and finishing strong? A team that ends the season fighting could enter next year with momentum, confidence, and a much clearer identity. And that matters, especially when major coaching decisions loom in the offseason. These final games are also about answers. Real answers. Is DJ Glaze the long-term solution on the offensive line? Has Malcolm Koonce developed into a player worth building around? Is Tyree Wilson ready for a bigger role, big enough to justify a fifth-year option worth serious money? These are decisions the Raiders must make soon, and the only way to make them with confidence is by seeing how these players respond down the stretch. The interior offensive line is another storyline to watch. With Jordan Meredith banged up, we might see new faces forced into action. Maybe Caleb Rogers gets his first real opportunity. Maybe unexpected depth pieces get thrown into the fire. In the NFL, sometimes one injury is all it takes for someone to step in and change their career. And then, there's the quarterback situation. Geno Smith has had highs and lows this season, but this game could be one of the biggest tests he faces. The Chargers' defensive coordinator Jesse Minter is known for disguising coverages and baiting quarterbacks into mistakes, the kind Smith struggled with earlier this year. How he handles the challenge will say a lot about his ceiling moving forward. Every snap in these remaining games isn't just about wins or losses. It's about discovering who deserves to be part of the Raiders' future. The Raiders already saw what happens when an offense becomes predictable. It falls apart. That was the story earlier in the season. And while the Chargers don't have a defense loaded with superstar talent, they do run a smart, disciplined scheme that punishes teams who give away their intentions. That's exactly what happened before. Opponents knew the Raiders' tendencies like a cheat sheet. If they lined up in shotgun, it was a pass nearly 70% of the time. Under center? A run almost 80% of the time. Those numbers weren't hard to figure out, and the Raiders paid the price for being predictable. But with new play calling and a cleaner structure, this offense has a chance to look completely different. And the most important question now is simple. Can the Raiders unlock the real version of Geno Smith? Because despite what some people think, Geno isn't far off from many of the quarterbacks being hyped around the league. Put him in the right system with the right support, and he can play winning football. We've seen it before, when he had strong coaching, a solid receiver group, and an offensive line that wasn't collapsing, he produced. Consistency wasn't the problem, the environment was. That's why these final games are so important. They will reveal whether Geno is someone the Raiders can build around next season, or if the team needs to look elsewhere. And while the Chargers don't field a scary roster, their scheme is built to confuse quarterbacks. That means this matchup becomes the perfect measuring stick. If Geno handles it well, that's a real sign for the Raiders' future. On the other side of the ball, the conversation shifts to the defense, and it's a heated one among fans. Patrick Graham's name has been trending for weeks. Some believe he's not the right fit. Others point out that Pete Carroll has reportedly shifted the defensive structure toward his own philosophy, putting Graham in a difficult position. Where the truth lies, we may not fully know yet. What we do know is that the Raiders' defense still shows flashes of strong coaching. Just last week, Graham designed a beautifully executed look that freed Darian Porter for a big play, the kind of creativity the Raiders need more of down the stretch. These final games aren't just about results. They're about clarity for the quarterback situation, the coaching staff, and the players who deserve a place in the future of this franchise. The Raiders showed something interesting on defense last week, a smart disguise that looked like cover 3 pre-snap, but shifted into a split safety look right as the quarterback committed to his read. The safety rotated late, the crossing route looked open, and Darian Porter jumped it perfectly. The throw sailed high, but the design of the play was the real highlight. That's the kind of calculated trap Patrick Graham can draw up when everything clicks. You can't call those disguises every snap. Quarterbacks eventually catch on. But when used at the right moment, they create game-changing opportunities. And against a team like the Chargers, mixing coverages and forcing hesitation could be the difference between a win and a long afternoon. On the defensive front, the Raiders need answers before this season closes. Can Tyree Wilson take a meaningful leap? Can Malcolm Koonce finish the season strong? Can Tonka Hemingway show enough growth to impact how the Raiders approach the draft? Because if Las Vegas ends up with a top 10 pick and decides not to take a quarterback, defensive tackle becomes a real option, unless a young player steps up and changes the conversation. And if not defensive tackle, the team could easily pivot to edge help, cornerback, or even safety depending on how the board falls. This roster still needs foundational pieces, and these final games will help determine where the biggest holes remain. The offensive line also needs a rebuild, and that won't change overnight. But seeing which younger players can contribute, and which ones can't, will shape the offseason plan. And while fans often push for the youth movement, Pete Carroll is wired differently. He wants to win now. He wants results. From his perspective, stringing together wins gives this team credibility heading into free agency. And that matters. Because when a franchise looks unstable, the only free agents willing to sign are usually the ones looking for the biggest paycheck, not the best fit. The truth is simple. Good teams attract good players. Bad teams attract players chasing money. The Raiders have lived both realities, and these next few weeks will determine which path they walk into the offseason. One thing the Raiders proved earlier this year is that talented players will come to Las Vegas when they believe the vision is real. Jeremy Chinn chose the Raiders because he trusted Pete Carroll's defensive system and believed the team was building something worth joining. But that only lasts as long as the product on the field backs it up. If the Raiders stumble to the finish line, free agents will think twice before signing smaller deals to join a team that isn't winning. They'll go somewhere else where the belief and the paychecks are bigger. But if Las Vegas closes the season with momentum, rebuilding becomes easier. Good teams attract players who want to win, not just players hunting for the highest offer. These last games also matter for evaluating the secondary. Is Jeremy Chinn a long-term piece? Is Isaiah Pola-Mao ready to lock down a starting role? Has Darian Porter shown enough to become a full-time corner next year? Meanwhile, others have struggled. Certain defensive backs have been targeted repeatedly and surrendered big yardage, and that forces the Raiders to ask tough questions. Do they need to invest a high draft pick at corner? Or can a young guy step up and claim a job? The same evaluation must happen at linebacker, on the defensive line, and especially at receiver and along the offensive front. Younger players like Jack Beck and Dante Thornton need snaps. Every rep matters when a franchise is deciding who stays and who goes. And while the offense still carries pieces of Chip Kelly's structure, the Raiders now have a fresh voice guiding it. That alone could change which players shine down the stretch. As for the Chargers, they're not an intimidating team. But the Raiders have had their own inconsistencies, and nothing is guaranteed. These final matchups will reveal who fights, who fades, and which players deserve to be part of the next chapter of Raiders football. Every decision the team makes this offseason, from roster moves to draft priorities, will be shaped by what happens in these final weeks.